Why is it critical for us to pay attention to our mental health?
I think it's very, very important. It's only in this part of crime people really don't pay attention to issues that surround depressions and things like that. When people are depressed in the UK, government are looking after them and say so that they won't commit suicide, and because that's not good for society. So mental health is something that, of course, will enhance the productivity of a society. When people are sick in their mind, they can't think and they cannot be productive. And so it's very important to talk about mental health. But you see, the beauty about mental health is actually your happiness is actually in your own hands. The more happy you are, the more healthier you actually become. And there's nothing that has happened on earth here that has not been before, and there's no one of it that has no solution. And I think people should just realize that we have a hold on our lives, and then, of course, we can drive its course. And this requires sometimes for us to stay focused and look at the end without really get stuck in the process.
Like you said, a friend of mine often say you are the CEO of your own happiness.
Yeah.
So it means it's self-responsibility.
Oh, yes.
You just have to try to make yourself happy. There are instances where you're surrounded with circumstances that will always make you depressed or gloomy, but you also have the responsibility to, manage that situation, how you react to it. We all understand that there are certain situations, that are beyond your control, the call of nature, certain things could happen, maybe job loss and some other thing, looking at the economic realities. But those things are not enough to get you to be sad, because you must understand that your health is very, very important. And I'm happy this awareness is coming. And we had a case recently where a young man at Falomo Bridge wanted to jump down the bridge. And I was happy that guy was rescued. And in fact, it's even criminal now for you to attempt suicide. There's a law in that regard. But what's more important is for us to be proactive. People have this mindset that once you start behaving irrationally, that's when you need to pay attention to your mental health. Things as little as stress could also compound mental health. So these are things that people need to watch out for. And I'm happy a day like this is dedicated for this. There will be a lot of seminar, public awareness for people to have better understanding of how to manage their mental health.
Yes, when you said that people are the CEO of their own happiness, a lot of persons do not even realize it. They see themselves as employee. As an employee, you're paid salary, so they expect other people to make them happy. Yes, people can contribute to your happiness, but fundamentally it's left in your hands. You decide whether or not you will be sad. Like you mentioned, life struggles are there, they are real, but how do you handle it? Some persons just can't handle pressure, and some persons, even when they can, they bottle up things. They allow the stress accumulate. They allow the pressure accumulate. People need to learn to unburden, talk to people. Now, in this part of the world, it's really not our culture or not something we're used to for someone to say, I want to see a shrink, I want to talk to a counselor, or I even want to talk to a psychiatrist. When you begin to experience certain things that are usually not normal with you, people check themselves into psychiatric hospitals overseas when they're having certain mental health symptoms and they want to get treated before it degenerates into something very serious. But people will feel, oh, so they call me a mad person. But you fail to understand that your mental health is like the powerhouse of any machine. It's like the engine of any machine. Once that is faulty, every other thing you do will be faulty. Your decisions will not be rational, and so you need to have that checked. And we need to begin to learn support to each other. I know that people are busy with the hustle and bustle trying to make ends meet, but we need to make time for each other, for family members, for friends, because just a little talk, a little encouragement could just stop someone from trying to commit suicide. So let's try as much as we can to be there for each other, and people should not wait until they feel so overwhelmed to seek for help.
It's actually because we live in an environment where people seems to have a kind of an understanding that everything should just be positive. And that's why today in the equation of success, people are talking about the 5 quotients. We're looking at intelligence quotients. We're looking at emotional quotients. We're looking at social quotients. We're looking at adversity quotient, and also talking about cultural quotients. Now, all these things are very, very fundamental and important to our mental state and health. A lot of people cannot handle failure. But it's all just right for people to realize that failure is not final. Like somebody say, success is equal to failure plus failure plus failure plus failure. So a series of failure that actually brings about success. And we must realize in a world where we have promised people that they cannot fail, or that everything will just be rosy, and therefore they have not been able to develop the adaptive capacity to handle adversity, then you find people getting into this state of mental illness or depression. So we should know that failure does not define us. How we respond to failure is actually what eventually will make us. So you are there thinking today that the world is down. No. So much has not been seen in this world. There's so much opportunity out there that can make people really successful. The question may be difficult, but there's an answer to it. A little search, a little research gets you to where that spot is, and life becomes good again.
You know, it's important for us to talk about this because part of our objective here, as far as this program is concerned, is to advance, development, and to also be part of the public awareness as far as soup news is concerned. And that's why we have to talk about it. All right, let's move on to the proper news, which is the federal government has granted approval for the appointment of doctors, nurses, and other clinical health workers as contract staff once they reach their mandatory retirement age or years of service. Now, the federal government is coming up with an initiative to, accommodate contract staff, health workers, doctors, nurses, and other health workers. You agree with me that Nigeria is going through a time where we're experiencing shortage of health workers in this era of Japa, where doctors are like the rave of the moment. They are being sought after over there, and some of them prefer to travel abroad. We're experiencing brain, drain, and then this has led to a lot of, issues. The World Health Organization recommends that the ratio of doctor to patients should be 1 to 600, but in Nigeria, it's the reverse, maybe like 1 to 5,000 or more, and that has called for concern. But I think with this arrangement, it's going to help that loophole. Idauza, what do you think?
Well, I think for me it's a very welcome development in the health sector. And this is not just applying to the health sector alone. I remember the last time we're having a conversation with the DG in Nigerian Policy Research Institute in Kuru. And one of the issues that we're looking at was that that institute is supposed to be training people in different sectors of government to really develop policy. But what we find out is that many people who get to Kuru, they are at the twilight of their exit, maybe 2 years or 1 year to retire. And having imparted so much on them, then they leave the scene, which is really very, very antithetical to its own purpose. So I think this is important. Now, at that level of retirement, there's so much experience. And the mandatory age is 60 or 35 in service.
Yeah.
Now, that point in your life, you probably have accumulated sufficient experience. And that some of them are still very healthy and active. And then they are booted out of the service. And I think reintroducing them will actually help strengthen the health sector in Nigeria, that experience that they have accumulated over the years, they can still render services to the nation without really being consigned to the dustbin of history, as it were, and doing nothing, and then aging quickly and dying prematurely, as it were. So I think for me, it's a very welcome development that the federal government is considering that these people, with those wealth of experience, those training that they have acquired, even with the public resource, especially at that level, because there are strategic training that they get that the nation need to actually benefit from the result of such trainings for the benefit of all of us all.
Experience is what you can buy, on the shelf or in the market, as they say it, here, and the kind of experiences people have acquired over the years. For someone who has been in service for 30 or 35 years, that person has a lot of value to, to add to the system.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I agree with what Delsa said when he talked about how when they're taken off the system, by the time they attain the retirement age, a lot of them have really nothing to do, and it quickens the aging process. People who have been active all their lives and now not doing so much. Some of them are able to start up their own hospitals or clinics, and for you to see them, you know how expensive it is going to private hospitals. But when they're left in the system, it means that other people can have access to them as consultants, as whatever they will be in the system. And then the young doctors, young medical practitioners coming on board can benefit from their experience. So it's a good thing. It's going to increase the numbers of medical professionals available in the system, and it's also be good for senior citizens.
I'm also still worried about the unusual exodus of our health workers, doctors. I have a lot of doctor friends now who are the three in UK, Canada, US, even as far as Saudi Arabia.
It's all in search of greener pastures.
Yeah, but leave the greener pasture really out of it. And I think for us, this is also something that we also need to really speak to. Why we encourage government to invest in the health sector and really make it globally competitive. We really also know that government has the responsibility too of managing social tension. Not talking about just Nigeria alone. We have said this time without number. We are not even in the list of the first 10 people who experiences this migration syndrome. India is everywhere in the whole world. If you go to the UK today, they are almost everywhere. In short, the Prime Minister of UK is an Indian. So, I don't think migration is a problem, and we should not see it as a problem. As human beings will exist, people will migrate. But I think where the emphasis should actually be is that we be able to actually become a laboratory to feed the entire world with medical practitioners. Just the way Indians are everywhere in the world, you're having Nigerian doctors everywhere in the world, and they're actually contributing to humanity. That will be a plus to us. And as I being a plus to us, it also will bring into our country what they call diaspora remittances, which of course will strengthen our macroeconomic conditions here in Nigeria. So that for me is what it is. Let's build structures. Let's increase our capacity to train. Since the world now have a flair for Nigerian medical practitioners, let's train more. Let's send more out to render service to humanity. Just the way they came to give us civilization, let us transfer health to the West. As people may condemn our system as they are, the other time UK opened up a door for our teachers to come. There's something they are seeing in us that we can't see in ourselves. And I think what we need to do is to strengthen the system that produces these doctors so that we can be of service globally.
That's great. Let's move on. Our president is in the news again. Blessing called the president a newsmaker.
He's the number one citizen. Of course, he should be a newsmaker.
And so this time around, he has appointed new members to the Presidential Media Advisory Team in accordance with the Nigeria's Federal Character Principle. The individuals have been appointed to serve in the office of the president under the Media and Publicity Directorate. We're in a season of appointments. I would have thought the president is done with appointments, but I was surprised yesterday when I saw the press release and I saw names. Interestingly, fella Durotoye,
yes.
Which the good thing about it is the president is creating a resemblance. Let me use that word, of a unity government, whereby you're bringing everybody on board to create sense of belonging. It's good. But on the other side, I'm also concerned about the cost of governance, because you have to pay these people.
Yes.
We're at a time where the advocacy is for Nigeria to cut costs, so that we won't have unusual expenses. But now we are having series of appointments. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think while we have to focus on cut cutting, we must not also be blind to the challenge, which of course the nation face, is needing a critical mass of people that will champion and inspire this renew hope agenda that the president speaks to. So for me, it's not about where cost is. It's the fact that the president is saying we want to create wealth. We are worrying about cutting costs because we have been sharing one small pie of cake. Now we are building a bigger pie. So you will need people to build this real bigger pie. So I don't want us to be faithless as a people, to think that, yes, the cabinet is too big, we cannot accommodate it. We can always speak to that when resource is not coming. And I think over time, from what we have seen recently in fact allocations, we see revenue is coming. So as revenue is coming, the president needs to engage hands, tested hands, that will help build this nation so that we can build this bigger pile of cake that can go around the over 200 million people that are living here in this environment. So this for me is what is most important. Now you understand that it's not just about really forming a government of national unity. It's a president who is looking out for people who can, because the nation belongs to us. It's not about who win the presidency. It's not about who sits in Aso Rock. It's about delivering value to the population or the citizens of a country. And so if anybody has a capacity, like Duro Toye said, look, I have the capacity. I could actually govern. And the president is saying, come, let's do it together. This for me is heartwarming. That you have a lot of people who are also thinking, who want to contribute to the process of national development. And this is not likely to constitute to a very high cost of governance. Not necessarily. We must not interpret it that way, but we must be looking at what they are bringing to the table that will be for the good of all of us. And don't forget, recently, a lot of people have actually looked at the people who were speaking for the president, and we saw some level of overzealousness. And of course, you're bringing maturity to the table. Because in the process of change, communication is very vital. How you talk to the people is important in the process of creating credibility and trustworthiness for the administration or the regime. Is also very important how we speak. Don't forget that in the last election, we didn't have up to 30 million people who voted across board. So that speaks to the fact that if you have 200 million people in a population and you're only having about 30 million people voting, where over 90 million people registered, then it speaks to you that not everybody really believes in the system. So which means there's a trust deficit. Now what you are telling to the people that will encourage and inspire hope and participation so that we can reduce the level of apathy in the system is important. And this is why for me it is critical that the president strengthen his team who communicate with the people, who relate with the people, so that we can actually reinvigorate the fading hope of the masses.
Yeah, this part caught my eye, or caught my attention actually, where the president emphasizes the importance of upholding the highest standards of decorum and decency in engagement with the public. And they also talked about how some past media aides or people who were in capacity to speak for the presidency were overzealous. So I think this emphasis will check that. So you don't just come out to speak when you should not speak. You shouldn't say things you shouldn't that you were not to say at a particular time, because there are things that could be said you will incite the public, and then you'll be doing damage control. And there are also things that should inspire hope that needs to be communicated. So it's important that the president is not just appointing people, but is also telling them, this is what I want and this is not what I want.
You remember in Donald Trump's regime, it was chronicled that he told over 2,000 lies. Oh yes, of course, because there were a lot of things you said to the public and they are waiting for its manifestation and they cannot see it. And so this reduces the trust and the credibility of the regime. And I think it's very critical. Communication is critical in change management.
As long as there's delivery and there's results, I don't think Nigerians will mind the number of people that have been appointed, as long as the problems are solved, and then Nigeria is better for it. So let's hope to see what will come out of that.
Okay.
All right. Let's look at the corporate social responsibility being embarked on by Dangote Cement. This time around, Dangote Cement is thinking of, floating a welfare program for the elderly for 70 communities in Ogun State and some of the neighboring communities. You will agree with me that it's important for us to take care of the elderly ones, the senior citizens in the society. And Dangote is taking that initiative. We don't have to leave everything for the government. What do you think? Corporate social responsibility.
Well, I think it's important that Dangote realizes that, CSR is a part of responsible citizenship. That as corporate entity, especially in the area in Ogun State, where, of course, they are producing this cement, a whole lot of environmental pollution takes place. And this affects the health of the people. And so it's just only responsible as a responsible citizen or company to begin to give back to the society. Not just here, we've seen that happen in Kogi State the other day, and now it's Ogun State. But we're also trusting that the quality of this social intervention should be really solid enough so that people can actually feel those impacts. Because sometimes when CSR are done by corporate citizenship, it's done with a view of marketing. And I think today in CSR studies is far more than trying to just give a handout to people. Is corporate responsibility, corporate citizenship, that you as a company, you have an obligation, which is mandatory, to give to the society where you are operating, because you are deriving benefit from them. They are critical stakeholder. And so it's not just giving assistance to people. That's not what it is. It's doing your duty. And Dangote Cement owes that responsibility to the people of Ogun State.
Yes, in recent times, Dangote Cement has been in the news for CSR, doing CSR. But I also hope, like it also hopes to, that the measure of what is being done is reasonable to make impact. Because there was a time we talked about CSR here, and we looked at countries who were doing a lot in that aspect, and no African country really was among the top 5. You could find countries in Europe doing a lot of CSR. So I think it has to be intentional. It has to be about impact more than a PR stunt, really. And but I want to encourage Dangote to do more, Dangote Cement players to do more, and other organizations, other companies, particularly those who are into extraction, who are in the extractive industry, because of the environmental impact that their activities also cause, to do a lot more in attending to their host communities. That way too, you will get a cooperation, you will get rest to continue to function in your environment, because by the time the people begin to demand it from you, you wouldn't like it. So it's an encouragement to companies to begin to do more and give more back to society.
I also like the fact that the focus this time around has to be the senior citizens. These are categories of people who have served the nation and they're in their prime. And you often have the situation, most of the time, they are lonely or being neglected, because when it comes to their welfare, and because they are retired, most of them are retired, they can't be that active like before.
Yes.
So if this kind of CSR is targeted at people like this, I find it very commendable. And what it means is it will encourage them, create sense of belonging, because their welfare is quite critical. What do you think we need to start doing as a nation to ensure that our senior citizens, are being taken care of? Do we even have data to even know the number of senior citizens or the elderly that we have?
Well, I think it's important that we take care of senior citizens. I give you one example. Some years ago, I think that was in 2004, thereabouts, we were facilitating a training in Jos, and I was talking to one gentleman, and he said to me, yes, we're talking about stop corruption, but the nation does not look after me. If I look at my father, who served the nation with all his energy, and how he ended, I don't think I owe this nation anything that smacks of corruption. Because I can't see anything in my father's life that really will encourage me to say, let me give my all to the nation. So this is very important, because it's a motivation for patriotism. It's a motivation for nationalism, that the people who are coming behind can see that society really care about the aged. Because you can sit down one day and you ask yourself some very critical question. A friend of mine some years ago went to see his in-law, and he said he saw the situation that the man was at that time, and he suddenly realized and said, so you mean if I'm old, this is how I'm going to look like? You see, this is where it's important that people need to realize that we look at old people, when we see honor, we see glory, we see dignity, it will be good for us to think of becoming old. So this is important, and this is a motivation that I feel it's necessary.
It's important because even the young ones now will grow old one day.
Of course, of course, of course. And I think we need to begin to look at socially, how do we attend to them? I know this is not a very popular kind of system like they have in other climes where they have old people's homes. If you say that, yes, some people feel, no, so I should go live with strangers at my old age. But I think we need to come to terms with certain realities. Because while you may even be able to provide for yourself a good home or a good house to live in, because there are things that makes a house a home, but because of life, you may have children who live in very far places, and because of the nature of their job or what they do, they're not around you a lot of times. And you mentioned loneliness, which is one thing that the elderly deal with a whole lot. We have boarding school system for children, for people who are in schools, not because they do not have parents, but apart from the fact that the structure there would promote the reading culture and will help them focus on school, it is also good for parents who have very busy schedule so that their children can be cared for. Maybe if we look at it in that manner too, if we can have a system like that where they are there maybe most days of the week, and then they come back to their homes, they can interact with their peers, and that takes away loneliness. They can be involved in social activities that enables them to be productive, because there is strength in collective building than only one person thinking of what business do I have to do at this time, how do I network, than when they are put together in a structured system. I think we should begin to look at designing something like that for the elderly.
All right, now let's go to Dubai. I like talking about UAE, I know you have a stake there, so that should Now, the Dubai Press Club has partnered with Mohammed Rashid University of Medicine and Health Sciences to conduct a training program titled Introduction to Health Science for Journalists. Now, the Dubai Press Club, they had to partner with their university to float a training. And the focus this time is talking about, responsible journalism. In this age, or social media age, everybody claims to be a journalist. You have people who are not trained, who do not, have the nitty-gritty of the profession, claiming to be journalists just because they have data, they have access to phone, or they're on social media, everybody claims to be an authority. And you see them claiming to be bloggers or whatever they are. And somehow, this is also affecting the image of that profession.
Yes.
So the Dubai Press Club is coming up with that initiative to emphasize on the need of responsible journalism, for journalists to be responsible, or to have sense of responsibility when it comes to the dispensation of their job, whether broadcasting, production, or whatever, during your or the aspect of the production you want to embark on. And so it's important, and that's why Dubai Press Club is making it an initiative. What do you think? Responsible journalism.
Oh, wow. I think that's very important, and we cannot overemphasize the role of the media in building a very cohesive and varied society. And that's why in the UAE, the press is really regulated to a very large extent, because the media, as against its popular belief today that it's only bad news that sells, is not healthy for society. The media is not just a vehicle to carry bad news. The media is actually a vehicle to help people adjust to situations so that unnecessary tensions and heat is not created in society. And this is what, especially us in Nigeria, journalists in Nigeria, has not been able to really imbibe, because there's a whole lot of sensation in reporting and journalism in our climate. And we need to be much more responsible. And I think it is good for us to look at what is happening in the UAE and say, you want to report hate, there's a way to go about it. So I don't create public scare and create more damage. I remember some years ago when there was some bomb blast in Lagos. Many people died out of fear than those who actually were killed by the bomb. People just heard the explosion and they were running, and people were falling into canal, they were dying, really without seeing anything pursuing them. And this is what you do with sensational journalism. You drive people into fear. I said to somebody recently, many Nigerians who have left this country today, they are actually not living because they are looking for greener pasture. It's because of the way we have reported the security situations in Nigeria that fear has engulfed a lot of people, that people who actually had good job doing, they have to relocate because of the fear and challenge of security. This is what the media can do in society. They create cleavages. And so in that climb, they ensure that when you are reporting, you're saying things that can inspire hope, not things that can damn or destroy the hope of the average citizen.